Welcome, everybody, to Stay Curious. I'm Mark Marquette, your host, broadcasting live from the American Space Museum in downtown Titusville, Florida, where for over 20 years we've been preserving the birth of America's space age right here in this delivery room, Brevard County, Florida. Today, we're going to have a nice tribute to this man behind me that we have more memorialized out at Spaceview Park. Al Worden. Uncle Al to many of you, what a character he was of all the Apollo astronauts that I've heard about here at the Space Museum, and we were founded by the Apollo astronauts. Al Worden, definitely one of the biggest characters, one of the funnest guys out there, and known as Uncle Al to a lot of you and me out there. I met him on a couple occasions and have my own little stories to tell, as maybe you do. But first, we're going to wish everybody today a happy International Traffic Light Day, okay? Yeah, here's my little meme today to promote Al. And National Stoplight Day or Traffic Light Day at the Cape has some traffic lights that I didn't know about until we started talking about this little story there. And yes, those are some beautiful artwork pencil drawings by artist Doug Forrest. Know that you're watching Dougie and appreciate his support at the American Space Museum. Been a big part of our Shuttle Fest over the last 4 years. Hello again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Stay Curious. Sit back and enjoy some things about a true NASA legend and a wonderful guy, Al Worden. Let's talk first about International Stoplight Day. This is the stoplight that was out at one of the pads last century in the 1960s. And there's Rupert, the mascot armadillo of the Cape Canaveral Space Museum. And Rupert is actually up at the International Space Station. And I'm waiting for my friend, the director, Jamie Draper, out there to post a picture that Rupert is free floating around the International Space Station. He was not the zero gravity critter that they used on Crew 11 that we all saw launch on the other day. But nonetheless, he's up there and we'll see him soon floating around. But there's a red, yellow, and green stop sign that was used out at the Space Center. For what, pray tell? Traffic? Heck no, to let you know about the rocket launches going on. This is a Crouse-Hinds, Syracuse, New York stoplight out there. And let me get my eyeballs on here. And what does this holiday have to do, you say, with Cape Canaveral? Well, plenty. Beginning in 1956, 4 Atlas ICBM, International Continental Ballistic Missiles, launch complexes 11, 12, 13, and 14 were built on what become ICBM Road. Construction included the installation of a pad warning light at each pad. These were traffic lights, just like we've shown here. And there's one of them right there at one of the rocket launches. Not sure which one that is, but you see the traffic light there with the arrow. More specifically, they were Crouse-Hinds type TSP 433 four-way signals. There they are right there. And see 4 ways on each 4 sides there. They operate in a similar manner as a traffic light. Green meant safe. All right. Yellow denoted caution and red signified danger. They represent one of the countless historical examples of existing technology repurposed for launch activity at the Cape in the 1960s. So these images are from the Space Force Museum collection showing traffic lights during historic Atlas launches. They even found original engineering drawings for them out there, like this one from Pad 14. And there's another traffic light at a launch there. It's on red, though it's a black and white photo. But of course it would be green, that there was no danger. Yellow, maybe when they were fueling it up. And red, don't go near here. We're gonna launch a rocket. There's another engineering drawing of the stoplight at Pad 13. We're doing all this because it is Happy International Traffic Light Day. Every day of the year has some meaning to someone somewhere. So we dug this up for your enjoyment today. And there's another Atlas launch. That could be a Juno launch with the that that looks like Explorer One launch there, with the bulbous payload at the top up there. But there you see the traffic light, obviously on red. So what a fantastic tangible connection to our early rocket launches out at Cape Canaveral. So hope you enjoyed celebrating International Traffic Light Day with me. But today I felt it was so appropriate to talk about astronaut Al Worden. The command module pilots actually were amazing astronauts that orbited the moon by themselves while their compatriots got all the glory walking on the moon. But while the Apollo 8 orbited without a command service module, and of course 10 separated just for a little bit, and 11 did not have a scientific bay, nor did 12, 13, or 14. All right. But on 15, 16, and 17, they put a bay full of cameras in that payload bay on the service module there. And because that service module is ejected and burns up in the Earth's atmosphere before re-entry of the command module, nothing would be brought back from there. But back there were cameras that had film in them. Photographic film. Here's what photographic film looks like. Let me take that image in full here. Here is a Fujifilm, which is in a green canister. That's why that looks transparent there. Probably should use the red Kodak. But this is the plastic that's holding the sensitive silver halide on the back here. And it's all in the canister. And this is the technology until about 2095 that we were all dealing with. And then digital cameras came on board around the late 1990s and took over in the year 2000 for film. So there are rolls of film that is rolled up, exposed, re-rolled up, and Al Worden's job was to go back and retrieve the film canisters. Okay, and Al was such a jokester in many ways, and those of you that have been around Al know that he spoke what he thought. He swore a lot. He didn't hold back any punches, and I'll tell a couple stories as I can think about them. But one time I heard him say at a talk, he said, they're on the moon for 3 days taking pictures of themselves left and right, and I go out and do a spacewalk and they take one picture of my damn feet. There's very few pictures of Al Worden's spacewalk. Stills. I think there's a movie video of it. And he kind of complained about there's no real great pictures of me doing a spacewalk out there. And yet Doug Forrest, artist friend of ours, hi Doug, in Los Angeles. He's actually in the Pasadena area. Doug did this beautiful pencil drawing of the spacewalk by Al. And there's things that I'd like to know about Marty on this. Is one, he's got a striped helmet that was his commander's helmet. All right. The other two astronauts, the stripe means the commander on the moon. That's how they told apart the two astronauts, Jim Irwin and Commander David Scott. David Scott is still alive at age 92, by the way. There's the film canister in his hand that he had to retrieve and then not drop it into weightlessness. Al is 197,000 miles away from the Earth, all right, which puts him just about 50,000 miles away from the moon. And he said he looked up and he could see the tiny Earth, bluish marble, and the other direction was he said kind of a grayish brown moon in there. And he wrote several books we'll talk about to emphasize that you could read about what Al Worden said about his experience there. So beautiful. And there's a sketch. Beautiful, more than just a sketch, of course. This is Doug Forrest's work that he is such a master at with the pencil. And he is a full-time graphic arts person in the industry there at the Los Angeles movie industry and television and so forth, but that looks like Uncle Al to me. And we want to brag a little bit about Doug, 2 R's in Forest. You can go to apollo-arts.com and see he's totally into the Apollo history artwork. He's talked to astronauts about some of their things they did, like Al Worden. He talked to about this, how he felt and how to depict Al in space there. So Doug, good luck to you there. You go to his website there. You can buy some of his prints, and please do to support one of our fine supporters of our museums there, Doug Forrest. Well, talking a little bit about the Earth history. Let me go back to that just a minute. I wanted to go back and say that this is a 21-inch by, well, it's got to be wider than 6.5. That's not right. It looks like about 20 by 21. That's a G clay print, archival quality ink. All right, and it can be yours for about $200. All right. The EVA lasted 38 minutes and 12 seconds, and yet this is the first time an astronaut ventured outside en route in between the Earth and the Moon. Now, on the other end, like depicted in the picture here, let's go back to that, is Jim Irwin, although he didn't extend himself out like this picture shows here. And I thought I had some information on that. No, I didn't get that off of there. So Irwin's head was sticking out maybe, and he was reeling out the life-giving hose of oxygen and so forth, communications that Al Worden was on. And just an amazing feat the first time we did this, and then the other two astronauts on the moon landings, Tom Mattingly and Apollo 17's Apollo 17 was, and he just passed. Who died?
Ron Evans?
Ron Evans. Yep, Ron Evans was the other one. Only 3 humans have got outside their spacecraft. But this is an inter-EVA for Irwin and Dave Scott, who's flying the spaceship. He's got to do, he hopefully doesn't have to burn Al's butt there with one of the thrusters, the RCS thrusters there, but he had ways of keeping it, station keeping there during this almost 40-minute spacewalk on there. But risking their lives to get celluloid film to bring back, and these photographs helped determine the landing sites of Apollo 16 and 17, also had a lot of scientific value. And there's Al, one of the few pictures of him doing his spacewalk. But I wanted to note there, Marty, glad I went back to that. What they saw for the first time, Marty, was blistering of the paint on the command module, service module. See that? Right up there? Marty, I'm going to show you where it's at. You see the blisters there? Yeah, look at that blistering there of the paint. And so I don't know how NASA engineers looked at that, and did they do a different paint or primer or whatever. But yeah, quite a bit of blistering there. Though there was a rotisserie turning of the command module and service module to keep things warm. This was something that they noticed when the photos came back. And Irwin's taking these photos. He's looking around, and didn't take many pictures of Uncle Al up there. So we're glad that it's depicted like this by Doug Forrest there. So once again, you won't be disappointed looking at Doug's artwork. He's really got some amazing concepts there. So let's go to Uncle Al there. And, Marty, one thing that I look back of, I've been here 9 years at the American Space Museum, now privileged to be the director. But for over 20 years, they've been doing this road show of everybody, of astronauts being called upon to help this museum. This is 15 years ago. In 2009, okay, 16 years ago, if I do my math right. And there's Bob Crippen, who is 80 some years old and not really doing much at the moment, though he's in good health. Winston Scott, one of our go-to astronauts to help us with things. Bob Springer, another one that helped us a lot in the past. And there's Uncle Al on a four-person panel at the American Space Museum's facility in one of the malls here. And the occasion was that they had done their handprints, and their handprints are in front of them there. Warden's and Bob Crippen's, though we never did Winston's or Bob Springer's. Marty doesn't have a phone. Marty doesn't have a microphone there to talk to him about. But I do know Springer was a long distance runner, right, and participated in some of your runs around here, or no? Yeah.
He didn't run, he was a guest.
Oh, okay. All right. Not much of a runner. There's Uncle Al when he's born in Jackson, Michigan in 1932 on February 7th. Spent his early days living on farms and attended the University of Michigan for 1 year. Well, sorry about that. He could have gone to a good school like Ohio State, but then he did go to the military academy at West Point in New York. Graduated in 1955, like 47th in his class of 470, and he became Group 5 astronaut in 1966, joining his fellow classmates at the Naval, Charlie Duke, Stu Rosa were part of his friends at the Air Force. He went to Naval Academy in Annapolis, all right, and then of course was selected by West Point. He said, quote, "No way was I going to live the rest of my life on a farm." That kind of got me started down the path that led to NASA. And he liked the demanding life at West Point. Looking up a couple of the biographies that I have, he does have a website to honor him. He was 34 when selected as an astronaut in 1966. So in 1971, 5 years later, he's 39 years old. All right. One thing I wanted to say that he did. He wrote a couple books. Fallen to Earth was a national bestseller with Francis French. Okay, one of the great autobiography authors of astronauts, Francis French. Then he did a kid's book, Astronaut Al Travels to the Moon, that you may all own. And then he did another book, Hello Earth, Greetings from Endeavor, which I think was a poetry book, and or maybe The Light of Earth, Reflections of a Life in Space. So 5 books, Hello Earth, Greetings from Endeavor, I Want to Know About a Flight to the Moon, Falling to Earth, Astronaut Al Travels to the Moon, and The Light of Earth, Reflections on a Life in Space. And Francis French had something to do with 3 of those books, I believe. So one of the stories that got Al in trouble was, of course, Apollo 15, I'm not going to get into it, had a stamp controversy where stamps were taken to the moon for them to cancel and sell back on Earth to support their families, okay, in the case they were dead on the way back, but also to finance their kids' education is what the money was for. So we're not going to get into that whole fiasco, but Al was kind of bitter that had happened and tarnished his reputation because he didn't have much to do with it. But when all Air Force crew went to the moon, and Jim Irwin and David Scott launched off the moon live on remote camera on Apollo 15 that was on the lunar module, you could see that live. Immediately you heard Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder, being played by a band, the Air Force theme song, and people wondered where'd that come from. And David Scott was caught by surprise. Where's that? Who's doing that? Is that you, Houston? That's just, he thought it was distracting to what they had to look at the levers and stuff to get off the moon and meet Al up there. But it was Al doing it on a tape recorder up there. And I don't think he was really admonished about that, but David Scott was not happy that he did that. I've read in several other places there. So there's another picture of Uncle Al in the command module there. Kind of gives you an idea of the tight quarters there. And but to show you that, we had a lot of fun over the years. These astronauts constantly making jokes on each other. And one of the big, after the mission of Apollo 12 came back, Pete Conrad, Al Bean, and orbiting, of course, was their good friend Dick Gordon. They did a parody called the Apollo 12 parody. If you've not watched that Apollo 12 parody on YouTube, do yourself a favor and do it. It's like a Marx Brothers meets the Three Stooges going to the moon. It's campy, it's silly, it's got a lot of fun things in it. And one of the things it has in it is our friend Hazel Seacack Banks. Hey, Hayes, hope you're watching today. There she is, a young, almost 20-year-old with Al Worden up there at the top, sitting around with Al, and then with the other crew members, Dave Scott and Jim Irwin, in front of the Apollo 15. This was her last mission she worked. She's got a mushroom dress on there, Marty, that she made. And we've had Hazel on many times. Look up Hazel Banks. She's an awesome, classy lady that really worked hard, and everybody loved her in the Apollo era. And then she went to Michigan and ended up working for the Buffalo Bills front office for the rest of her career, working for the great owner there, Ralph, owner of the Buffalo Bills. Escapes my name, but she worked for him and went to all 4 Super Bowls they lost. But Hazel was part of this parody. She, as Dick Gordon was orbiting the moon, she came up out of the payload bay, all right, and orbited with him while the other guys were on the moon, and she is in a bikini. So you'll want to check that out. And here is Hazel when the astronaut is revealed that she's flirting with in the command module, had this ape head on as part of the joke. And I asked her who was under the costume, and she said it was Al Worden. And she really liked Al a lot. Obviously the favorite of her, of all the Apollo astronauts. And there's beautiful Hazel Banks with the ape man Al Worden there. So check out Apollo 12 parody on YouTube. You will not be disappointed. And there's Al when he saw Hazel 5 years ago. He hadn't seen her in maybe 10 years. Hazel and I went together to go see Al talk at the University of Central Florida event they had on Apollo 11 in December 2019. And look at him looking at her, just saying, "Oh my God, Hazel, all the good times we had." And she told me a few good times they had, all good adult fun, of course, in there. But that's the type of guy Al was. Very personable, laid back, would be talking to anybody. And this was one of his last public appearances. He died, and I'm going to tell you the circumstances of his death because it really took everybody back. This is before COVID. Okay, this is 2019, and he died on March 18th, 2020, and he was 88 years old. He was in Sugar Land, Texas. He went to the Texas Medical Center and was convalescing at Sugar Land Assisted Living Facility at the time of his death, March 18th, 2020. That is the COVID pandemic time. He did not have COVID. I understand he had a series of mini strokes that brought him down real quick. When I talked to him at this event, he was looking forward to going to Qatar and playing some golf in the Middle East there. Here he is talking to the late Lee Solid, who was responsible for all 33 engines on that Saturn V rocket that Al rode to space. We miss you, Lee, a lot. This was part of the uh, panel discussion they had at the Florida Institute of Technology. Is that FIT? Yeah, is where it was, not UCF. It's FIT in Melbourne there. And a great event, and I got to talk to Al a couple times during the breaks. And I said, Al, our godfather, Charlie Mars, says that you were responsible for getting a lot of those handprints out there at Spaceview Park. And Al put his arm around me and he says, you tell Charlie he wouldn't have gotten any of those without me. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit because he threw in a few colorful words in that. And when I told Charlie Mars that, our godfather, he just laughed and said, that sounds like Al to me. Hope you told him I'm doing well, and I certainly did. Tributes to Al Worden's death were many. Okay, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine at the time said Al was an American hero whose achievements in space and on Earth will never be forgotten. Buzz Aldrin, a fellow West Point graduate, tweeted, "Line of Gray, be thou at peace. Godspeed, Al." And one of his business partners, Tom Coleman, said, although he was focused on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, Al's principal message was always to follow your passion wherever that leads you. All right. And even Vice President Mike Pence at the time said, we stand on the shoulders of space pioneers like Al, and America will always marvel at his achievements and look to him for inspiration as we strive to go further and faster than ever before. So, Al Worden, you're in our thoughts and prayers always. Your name comes up frequently here at the American Space Museum. And how can you not remember this guy when he's hanging out with our buddies Mark Usiak on the left and Carlton Bailey on the right? This was the last public appearance at Kennedy Space Center. I believe that was in October of 2019. I happened to miss that one, doggone it. And he gave the astronaut talk of the day and free autographs and so forth. And this is when you could pose with a picture with the astronaut right after their talk. And then they instead take him up to the bookstore or the Atlantis building in the afternoon to do that. So, guys, I know that you're remembering that day with Uncle Al with a big warm heart there. And I'm sure Al will never, ever forget Carlton's wardrobe there. Of course, you look pretty snazzy there too, USIAC. And there's another picture with Mitch Rothman beside Al there with the blue lanyard on there. And what a typical shot of Al Worden at any event, just having a good time, a cocktail in his hand, telling stories like people love to hear over and over and over. And that's what we believe you love hearing out there. Our American Space Museum Stay Curious program are some great stories on there. And Al's telling a whopper right there. That was probably at Space Fest. And wish that he was still around so I know we could get him at our Shuttle Fest there, Marty. Beautiful portrait of Al later in life with that serious, stern look. He was quite a character. I'll tell you another quick story that is legend now here at the American Space Museum. Is Al raised a lot of money for the American Space Museum, including, and one of the people that also helped us was Apollo 14 moonwalker Edgar Mitchell. And they would often talk at the same event. And Edgar Mitchell, if you don't know, founded the Noetic Institute of Paranormal Activities. And it still thrives in South Carolina, I believe, the Noetic Institute. And they are into extraterrestrials and paranormal things and stuff like that. And Al got up and talked a little. Ed Mitchell is up talking about his Noetic Institute in front of a group of a couple hundred people, and saying that he did try to do ESP experiments from the moon, but because their flight was delayed, the people on Earth in those days, in 1870, didn't have know what was going on the moon, so it didn't work out too well, those ESP experiments, Mitchell was saying, but he still believed in it, and he sat down, and Al Worden famously got up and said, "Thank you, Ed. You know, everybody, everything that he said, just a bunch of BS." and had them all rolling in the aisles with making fun of Ed Mitchell on there. But that's the type of guy he was, and Carlton Bailey saying the emotions that came out all the time. Mark and I were at Zarella's, and Al and Mark were friends, and Al would sit and talk for a while. He was just a regular guy, and he certainly was. He was very well missed. And looks like people are enjoying the show here. Jim McDade's adding that the 25-foot length of the service module was the same length of a bus on there. So he really had to kind of hit, they had handholds for him to get back there. Thank you, Jim McDade, for commenting today. And Fallen to Earth, Dave Stange says is a very good book, and it discusses the whole stamp fiasco. I've not read that, but I will. So a lot of good comments there. Glad that you're enjoying this tribute to Al Worden. When he passed away in March, I found a rose on his handprints out there at Spaceview Park. The pylons have the names of space workers that helped Al and his buddies go and return to the moon. One final thought about Mr. Worden here is, so I can read it. Flying to the moon is just a skill that can be learned. The greatest challenge is how you live your life and what good you can do along the way. So I hope you embrace that thought of Al throughout the rest of your day today. And if nothing else, just think about this brave American getting outside a spaceship into the void of the universe just to retrieve some silly pictures off celluloid film. Al Worden, we will never ever forget you, and we're so glad of what and happy for what you have done for the American Space Museum. It would not be the same without your support, sir. So thank you all for watching. Until next time, tomorrow we'll be doing an update of who's in space. I'll give you some idea about who's in space, when are some of them coming back, how long are the ones up there going to stay on our International Space Station, now jammed with 11 people and 3 Chinese orbiting in their heavenly palace, Tiangong, makes 14 humans orbiting the Earth. And we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow and some space history to whet your appetite as usual. So until tomorrow, thank you for watching. Thank you, Marty, for a great job solving our problems today. And I thank all for you for supporting the American Space Museum. Until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.